All right, guys, we are back. We are live. So got my co-host on here, and let's make it. Let's let it rock and roll. So we're just gonna recap really, really quick. So today we were talking about what, Miss Kendra?
What ails you?
What ails you, guys? And what's ailing the American people is chronic illness and conditions, which is crazy. So, really, really quick, if you guys have just joined us, let us know where you're tuning in from, city and state. Go ahead and comment. And if you're watching us on a replay, go ahead and just type replay and where you're tuning in from. Thank you guys for joining. So, me and Miss Kendra have been doing some research, and I found it very interesting. It's things that I hear. It's not like I'm completely surprised, but I think it was a little astonishing as far as the percentages. So we're talking about nearly 1 in 3 American people, right? One out of every 3 people that you more than likely see every day has multiple chronic conditions and illnesses,
Mm-hmm.
right? One of those that they started off with, and that was the obesity rate. We all like a good meal. We all like to eat, especially down here in the South. And the fast food, hey, the faster they can get us the food, the better. But it's contributing to 40.3% of American people being obese. And then you have 9.4% of American people that are severely obese.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking, Kendra, I know when we were trying to get our technical difficulties squared away, I got to thinking, just from traveling, you know how they say, oh, this is seedless watermelon, seedless grapes and stuff like that. Why is it? Is it because the American people is like, oh, I don't like this because it has seeds in it, it's taking too long for me to eat it and things like that? We're altering what these particular
The
fruits,
genetic. Mm-hmm.
right?
The
And what do you
composition.
think that that's doing?
Right. So it's interesting that you said that because I thought you were going to one of our other talking points, which is why are we in America?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we such a prodigy of fast everything? So
Mm-hmm.
including how fast we grow our food,
Yep.
thus having to greenhouse grow them, hybrid um, um, a generation of seeds so that we can quickly produce this produce in season and out of season. And
Mm.
so as we do that, we are introducing a synthetic process that goes against the intent that God had when he created food for our body. And so I agree with you that that's problematic. But one of the things that came to mind for me, you mentioned traveling, and I don't want to call out this particular restaurant, but I do want to share this scenario, and it speaks to your point.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to a restaurant in Doha, Qatar,
Okay.
that also has a footprint in the States here in Dallas. Was
Okay.
super stoked because when it was my first time experiencing that restaurant, thought that it was kind of an international experience, only to read the menu and find out that they have locations in Dallas and in Chicago, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
While in Doha, we were just amazed. The food was absolutely amazing. But
Mm.
when I tried the same restaurant here, it was very different. So the first thing that I noticed when I talked about it, the experience with my husband, was how long it took us to get our food when we were in Doha. It was
Mm.
not fast food. We ordered a chicken product, and it took very much, maybe about 20 minutes for us to get our food prepared and cooked and brought to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And it was seasoned to perfection. Thus the reason why we couldn't wait to get back stateside so we could experience it again. Um, but we were like, why is it so different here in the state? So the
Mm.
first thing is we walk in, the food is ready in 10 minutes, and it's a
Mm.
pretty large order. What's
Wow.
different? What's different about the process? Why does the model change so much from a country that eats really, really healthy, has a lot of, authenticity in terms of what they prepare. They actually, tout that authenticity of the foods and all of that. What changed
Mhm.
in that particular restaurant chain from Qatar to the US? And then let me add, it did not taste the same at
See,
all,
see there.
at all. So different processing. They pulled something out that they were able to put on the grill really, really quickly,
Mm.
right? And it was ready in 10 minutes, whereas it took, I want to say, well over 20 minutes for us to get three orders. There was three of us at the restaurant in Qatar. So there's something to be said about how we service, how the restaurant industry prepares to meet the demand of a US consumer, because we
Mhm.
want everything quick. And so
Yeah.
now let's go back to your original comment. Why is it that we are buying more seedless produce and vegetables? Because of the demand. And so to meet the demand, we're greenhouse growing. We're coming up with hybrid type seeds to grow produce that is seedless,
Right.
which its composition has been altered
Yeah. That, I mean, that's true. Just because of inconvenience. So not only are you trying to be too convenient, but then you're inconveniencing your body at the end of the day.
at the end of the day, it
But
has an
then
effect.
and
It
throw out a
has an
seed.
effect. Yes.
Spit out a seed. It's not that deep. It's not that hard.
It's not that hard at all. Yeah. And so
So,
I think that it's a culture that's
yep,
been adopted.
it is. And we want everything yesterday,
Right.
quick, quick, quick. And then, just I just think about it, the drive through fast food. Like, when did the transition? I'm going to go back and do the research. We're going to look at that the next time we jump on.
Okay.
When
Okay.
did Americans transition to fast food? And I want to say, I hate to call it a name, but I'm sure McDonald's is leading that change, right? I think they're one of the oldest fast food restaurants probably out there.
Yeah. It's one of the oldest, but not the oldest, I don't think. But yeah.
So,
Well, and the real thing is that I have the mantra that was given to me by a colleague who was a natural doctor.
uh-huh.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And that is, your food can be your medicine or it can be your poison,
Mm,
right? And so, inevitably, the more we ingest these genetically modified GMO type produce and foods or preservatives, the more it's going to alter the natural composition of our bodies, because our food is what hydrates, it's what feeds, it's what generates and keeps the body working and functioning as it was designed to work. But when you introduce toxins and preservatives and things that the body cannot produce, then it also has trouble actually separating nutrients from waste, and your body retains a lot of what it doesn't need to. And
mm,
so therefore, they're saying that gut health is like critical to the health of your overall body. Well, if the body can't process it and then the gut is storing it, then it's setting up a septic tank of sorts for disease to kind of begin to grow. And so you've got to purify that system, your digestive system, and then the blood, and then that then feeds all of the other components of the body. So you've got to think about it through that lens.
yeah, that's true. And even with piggybacking on what you said, like we want it so fast, we got to keep up with the demand and things like that. You see on the packages no hormones on beef and chicken and things like that. And then it's always more expensive, but you got to think about what it's doing, and we see it right before our very eyes. Because you see, man, that's an 8-year-old, man, that's a 10-year-old. Like he or she looks like my size, or like an adult already. So
Mhm.
if the chicken is growing, what, 100, what, 4 or 5 times faster, it's gonna do the
Genetically
same.
modified. Hmm.
It's gonna do the same exact thing to us. So it's not where, I guess we have to know if we are willing to try to keep with the demand, or if we're going to make sure that we're putting the proper nutrients in our bodies.
Well, let's stick another pin in something you just said. We want it. It's so much more expensive to buy organic and or natural, but is it
Mhm.
really? It actually goes back to the root cause of why it's so expensive is because of the demand now with the shift in health conscientiousness. But think about it. There's so many ways for us to be able to afford to eat healthy, but it goes back to our roots, and that is, are we willing to begin growing our own food, right? Because that takes time. That takes time, and we don't allocate that amount of time in our day.
Hmm.
So, thinking about and I forget his name, forgive me, I'm going to get it, but he's published a cookbook and talking about how you can grow your food and eat, kind of for free. For instance, he cuts off the head of the core of a cabbage that we typically throw away, and he puts it in a pot of soil, and it grows a head of cabbage. He does the same thing with seeds from bell peppers and things like that. So you buy it once and you keep taking the time to harvest those seeds, but it has to be seeded
You
for
said
you to
take the
harvest.
time. That's the key word.
It has to be seeded in order to harvest it, right? So there are ways to do it, but we'd have to have a commitment to going back to actually growing our own food
Yeah.
to turn that trajectory around.
And it's interesting that you said that because my wife and I have been talking about, hey, I mean, I think we want to go out and get some land. Now, I mean, I'm sure I probably can grow some vegetables and things like that, but as far as I probably need some help to come in and help me get it planted and, make sure that, the animals and the insects and stuff stay away from it and things like that. And I'm okay with that. I would rather have me at least 2 acres, 3 acres, still have a nice home, but maybe in the back, a nice garden. Hey, who knows? Maybe if I get up to 5 and 6 acres, I can have some cattle and some chickens, in the back, way in
Hmm.
the back. That way, you don't have that smell.
Right.
But seriously, if I'm gonna continue to eat meat and things like that, I would rather have my own mini, market.
Yeah, and I think you've tapped into something that my husband and I have talked about as well. I have a nephew who's done what I'm about to say, is that there are breeders out there who grain feed and ensure that the meat, the cattle that they're raising is eating naturally, so that that doesn't transfer into the cellular structure of the meat. But you can actually purchase an entire cow for the
Yep.
beef, and then have all of that food and everything prepared for you without preservative,
Right.
vacuum seal it, and then stock your freezer, and you'd have
Yep.
meat for you know 6 months to a year, depending on the size of your family, right? But again, that's extra steps. That's not the convenience of going to the grocery store and then buying it when you need it. So maybe it's a shift in our culture that we need to consider, a shift in our lifestyle that supports naturally eating natural products versus the quick and convenient way of just buying it at a grocery store.
Right. And that's interesting that you said that as well, because I know it's a cigar lounge that I usually frequent. I'm not a smoker, but I go there and network. But they were talking at one point about, hey, we're going to go in on a cab,
Yes.
and it was maybe
Yes.
2 or 3 people, and they were like, hey,
Yes.
maybe it was maybe been $400 or $500 to go in on it or whatever, and they
Exactly.
break down
Hmm.
the meat and like you said, stock freeze it.
Stock
That may
freezer.
be an option first, right?
Yes.
Until we get to that point. That way you can see. And I wish we would have started, earlier on. But hey, it's no better time to start than now. Um, that may be an option. I'm gonna have to reach out to him, maybe with like, as far as the chickens, because I know
Yeah.
out here in East, sometimes if you're going down the country roads, you'll see people saying, hey, they have eggs for sale. And that's something that we'll be able to do until you get to a point, or if you never get to a point to have your own farm, at least you're eating
You have
naturally.
options, and you're eating natural meat. Yes.
Exactly, exactly. So really, really quick, I want to make sure we touch on this next point: diabetes. Diabetes, the stats are saying impact 11.6 of the U.S. population, right?
Mm.
And then they said that's not even including, they're estimating about 8.7 million undiagnosed on diabetes.
Wow.
Crazy. Over 97 million adults have pre-diabetes. One out of every three. There it goes, that one out of every three again.
There it is again. Yes.
Now that's crazy. And it says the the four key risk factors are poor diet, inactivity, smoking, and alcohol use.
Hmm.
Underlying most preventable chronic illness.
Yeah.
Wow.
I go back to our food is either our medicine or it's our toxin, right? So
Yeah.
and then and the foods that we eat also make us lethargic. We always joke about the itis,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep.
But that heavy feeling, that gut clog that weighs you down, also means that you're actually not able to expel the waste that your body needs. It needs to get rid of those things that it doesn't need. And
Mhm.
so you're just holding on to all of that. You're holding on to the toxicity. You're holding on to the weight of food that you really didn't need to eat to begin with. And then it's
Yep.
just going through and then contaminating the rest of your body and its cellular structure. So, thus obesity. I mean, that's the body's ability to not expel what it needs, use what it needs, and expel what it doesn't need. You're giving it an overdose of something, whether it's the genetically modified foods and it's holding on to those toxins, and then, or you're just overeating, right? And
Right.
that's what they tell us. Like even in foreign countries, I'm hearing that, yeah, we Americans, they're prone to obesity because of the content of their diet. So you go to Singapore or other countries where they are really focused and they're thriving and their health industry is thriving, and you don't see a large, massive obese population. It's
Right.
because they're very intentional about the foods that are served and what and how they cook and how they prepare foods. And so like I said, and then we can go down a wormhole on that another time. But the blue zone, when we talk about what really, what does longevity look like, and they
Mhm.
the study that's been done around communities who collectively, holistically embraced health, and quality of health. Why
Mhm.
are they living so long? And when you study it, it's like you said, they are exercising, they're moving, they're
Yep.
eating well balanced food. It's a matter of mental, physical, and spiritual harmony. That's the combination to that formula for success. So it's just how we want to look at it. But until we globally approach it individually, we need to make a decision. We all have free will. We have to make a choice to do different.
That's true. What are we going to do about it? Complain about it or just sit and be on medicine? You know?
Right, right.
So I looked at this also with still talking about diabetes. Um, it says only about 25 Americans meet federal guidelines for physical activity. And so that leaves about what 75% people that's falling short on daily activity recommendations. And that goes back to the inconvenience. But the thing about it is, if we already know what they're putting in our foods,
Mhm.
right? And some people say, well, we can't really get around it. Okay, you can't get around it, but then you can actually add, natural remedies and
Yes,
things of that nature. Like we've been talking about the patch. Yes, we're going to bring that up. See it.
yes.
That's going to give you that nutrients that we're missing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I know people go back to what they can afford, like you were saying, what you can afford not to, right?
Right, right. And I think so. Let's stick a pin there because even as and I'm going to segue into some patch talk here, but even as I begin sharing the benefits of the patches and certain patch pairings and protocols with prospective customers, I think I hear more often than not that the cost is a deterrent, right?
Mhm.
So I go back to a scenario that even I lived through, and that is take an inventory of how many supplements you actually take and what the cost of those over a span of a month.
Mm.
And I know everyone doesn't have necessarily the same discretionary income or the ability to be able to do and purchase what I purchase, but I'll tell you this, and I think everyone has experienced that. Get a diagnosis from a doctor that says you are in crisis, and you'll pay whatever it takes to buy big pharma solutions,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh
So
yeah.
it's a matter of whether you want to proactively address your issue or react to it once you're diagnosed. So, first of all, let's start there. But then secondly, when you add up the cost, those of us that know as we're aging, you're going to need supplements. You needed them when you were young, but you really need something to kind of offset the depletion of those natural vitamins that you need. And so when you start buying them, so I am or was a Nature's Way person, but I did a multivitamin. I did calcium. I did magnesium. I did
Hmm.
ashwagandha. Right. I have a vitamin D deficiency. I had a vitamin D deficiency. I'm changing the vernacular here. I
Right.
had a B12 deficiency to the nth degree that sometimes I've become so depleted that I had to have shots to level it out. And then I would get on a high milligram of the actual vitamin. And so and then I was experiencing brain fog. So those of you who have purchased Nariva or the other one that's out there, I've tried two different ones. That was a part of my vitamin supplement regime, right? So when
Hmm.
I actually add, oh, and then there was a liquid vitamin I had begun to take because it actually got into the cellular structure much quicker, and I would get a bigger energy boost and didn't realize it. Most of the time, let me just state this: when you're taking vitamins, your body only retains a certain percentage of that supplement because you're going to waste out most of it. Thus, the
Yep.
the tip of the urine and everything until you've purged it from your system. So your body is really not even retaining everything that you're putting into it through a synthetic vitamin, right?
Mm.
So you've got to think about that. But let's go back to price point. When I added up the total cost of a 30-day supply of everything that I was purchasing, it was right at about $169. That's
Wow.
what I was spending a month to try to give my body everything that I thought, my body and my mind, everything that I thought that it needed to kind of stabilize and combat the effects of aging, right? Or what I
Hmm.
was told was the effects of aging.
Okay.
So now I decided to try my own experiment. I basically stopped taking that regimen, subsidized it with LifeWave patches, and I am better for it because
Mm.
not only is it supplying just the nutritional supplements that I need, it's healing me as
Right.
well. So, like I said, it has multiple effects and benefits. The
Wow.
patch, that is.
So with that, I know we're running right at about 22 minutes. With that, I want to make sure that we do key in on how long have you been patching again?
Sure. So I'm gonna demark my patching at March 3rd. And I say that because I had ordered them. Remember, I had talked to you,
Hmm.
ordered them. They didn't come in until like that Sunday. And then by the next 3 days, I was getting my body was in crisis. So I
Okay.
didn't really start patching until maybe the 12th or maybe somewhere around the 12th of March.
Okay.
But
12th of
I
March.
had seen my doctor to get my initial something's going on, and here's the litany of issues I'm experiencing on March the 3rd. So I know that at that point I had ordered them, but I didn't start patching until after that appointment.
So we'll safely say about 3 months.
Yes.
Okay. What have you seen in those 3 months,
Okay,
as far
so
as your illnesses or whatever?
sure. So we'll talk about the diagnosed illnesses first. So I left ventricular wall in my heart was enlarged.
Mm.
Um, it was triggering vertigo type symptoms, extremely high blood pressure spikes that were causing me to get nauseous and dizzy, and I was having heart palpitation. I also was in an accident where I totaled a vehicle, retore my meniscus in my knee, my left knee, and I have a rotator cuff tear that is exacerbated by a bone spur in my left shoulder.
Mm.
I have a sciatic nerve condition that I've had for years, but it was also further exacerbated by the accident that was 2 years ago. And then I did some extensive work in helping a family member with some house flips that just had me in pain
Yeah, definitely.
continuously. And so now we'll go to gastrointestinal liver disease. I'm not a drinker or a smoker, and I never have been.
Hmm.
That was an issue, and I'm missing. Oh, so thyroid. So
Hmm.
thyroid condition. So hormone levels were just off, and that deals with menopause and all of that. So what had started to happen was just a conflated state of illness, chronic illness, and just not feeling well, and in constant pain. So looking for a remedy. And so basically within the byproduct benefit was some of my conditions could be reversed with weight loss, but they wanted to put me on the GLP ones.
Mm.
And so that being said, I can talk about what the patch has done for me. So basically within 5 weeks, I had lost 17 pounds.
Wow.
And that was a byproduct because I paired the flagship product, the X39, with SP6. It stopped
Okay.
the noise from food cravings and sugars. So I didn't crave. Didn't have to battle that in terms of self discipline, but also just by increasing my water intake and also removing carbs from my diet. I
Hmm.
it was easy. I didn't do a lot of exercising during the initial weeks because I was concerned about my heart. I didn't know what was going on with it. I was on a monitor, and
Mm.
so I didn't do a lot of exercising. The weight was just falling off at a
Wow.
rate of around 3 pounds a week.
Mm.
Okay. And so I was like, wow. I even questioned one of my physicians around whether their scale was right at one point because I was like, you know, but also the blood pressure reversed itself. I
Wow.
I'm sitting at 117 over 74 as kind of like my average, whereas I had gotten to 179 over like 104 is where it was spiking to. I think that was one of my highest ones. And that would happen every 2 or so days. And so I went back to a gastro and specialist who
Hmm.
expected to kind of check me on weight and tell me what next steps were going to be, only to have him say, "Oh my gosh, your enzyme levels have level set.
Mm.
You have lost weight," because by the time I saw him a couple of weeks ago, I was down 23 pounds, right?
Wow.
And that's gaining and then re-losing, because I've gone and traveled and gained 7 and then lost it back again. But the overall net loss was at the 23 pounds at that time.
Wow.
Our cardiologist basically said the same thing. He said, "Oh, your blood pressure is low. We might need to take you off of the blood pressure med." Didn't tell him I hadn't taken it since early April, right?
Now we're not
So
telling people not to take their medicine. That's just what happened,
that's
or
not what that's just not what happened. I needed to be able to set some controls so I could see what was happening and what I needed to do.
hmm.
So he did at that point say, "Hey, let's reduce your millage per day." I was like, "Sure," you know. But my thing is not refilled, not taking the entire prescription period. I took it for those first weeks
Right.
leading up to April, from like March to April. But beyond that, when I started feeling different and feeling better, my energy level is back. And my last praise report is my primary care physician, who I saw on March the 3rd. I
Hmm.
had my follow up with him 2 weeks ago, and he shared, "Oh my gosh, you're doing great. What are you doing?" He said, "You've lost the weight." And he said, "Your blood pressure is awesome." And he said, "How are you feeling?" I said, "I'm feeling great." And then I saw him scrolling through my blood work, and I said, "Wait, wait, wait, what's my TH1?" And
Hmm.
he said, "Oh, it's sitting at 1.45." I said, "That's
What was that? One
increased
point what,
substantially."
Kendra?
It was 1.45 where it had bottomed out, and I was at 0.47
Mm.
originally. And the range is like point 0.4 to 4.5. And
Okay.
so just the fact that on its own, without any synthetic hormones or any other synthetic anything, it's going up on its own. And the only change has been these patches.
Wow. Wow. So I mean, a lot of people have been asking, "Hey, do they really work?" So I just like for people to have their own experience and, like I say, real people, real results.
Absolutely.
We can sit and complain about it, but when we have something that is right there in our hands and reach and just click of a button, it's
Yeah.
really, it's really on us, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's really on us. I'm definitely happy. Congratulations on that.
Thank
Your success,
you.
Kendra.
I just want to encourage others to get on the journey. It's possible.
Right. It's definitely possible. It's definitely possible. So I didn't want to hold you too long. I know you're a busy woman.
Okay.
And guys, we're going to be doing this weekly. just checking in, and we're gonna have other special guests that comes in with us, and just to kind of give you guys some insight to know what options. We always say you have options. What options that you have, regardless of which of these chronic illnesses that the stats that we just read for U.S. health stats. The one in every three Americans. We don't know which ones you're dealing with, but make sure you tune in and make sure you let us know where you're tuning in from. Guys, go ahead and comment, like, and share the post so it may help someone and save their life and give them a more uh, livable, right, comfortable
Quality of
life.
life. Yeah.
Quality,
Quality of
most
life.
definitely. Well, so any
Awesome.
last words, Miss Kendra?
I would just say, hey, you've got to come, you've got to get on, you've got to get patched today. There's a patch for everything that ails you. So the key is put on this little quarter size patch
Yep,
and watch it work for you.
yep.
Watch it
Quarter
work
size.
for you. 100% natural.
Most definitely. Most
Okay.
definitely. Well, thank you again for your time, and thank
Thank you
everybody
for
that
having me.
joined on today. You guys have
All
an
right.
awesome weekend.
You too.